Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is showtime, folks. Let's get ready to podcast. Welcome back into the Nightmare Room. I am your host, Nick Nightmare. Thank you for joining us live here on the Sledgehammer Sports Network. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's get it started. Alright, so as I've said before, we are not just going to be a wrestling channel. We are now the Sledgehammer Sports Network because I love my sports. I love my sports teams, as most of us do out there. Most wrestling fans also love all kinds of competitive sports, as I do. I have a nice cold beverage in my hand, a nice beer to go to after a terrible 7-hour day at work. And I want to unload here because we got some stuff to talk about today. We are going to start off with our wrestling news, but we are also going to talk some baseball today and possibly going to talk about some TV stuff because we got a big event happening tonight on TV, and I am not talking about Hell in a Cell, but we'll get to that in just a moment. We didn't have a Smackdown review again, and I know I did promise you guys last time that we were going to have one, but there just really was no reason for me to review the show. Smackdown, for the first time in a long time, was a pretty boring, lackluster show. It's almost as if they're unsure what to do because they're not part of Hell in a Cell, so they're just going to put on a random show. And yes, they kept consistency with the whole James Ellsworth thing, but nobody expected him to win that match. AJ Styles was going to win that match. There was no way Ellsworth was going to be the World Heavyweight Champion. There's not even a real reason for this guy to have a t-shirt. Now listen, I'm all for the underdog story and whatever, but I don't want to see this guy on my television. It just doesn't appeal to me. I don't understand why he's being thrusted into the main event, even though it's at the behest of Daniel Bryan. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not digging it. I'm not with it. I'm glad it's over, or I hope at least that it's over. It could very well be just the beginning of very many attempts at AJ Styles for Mr. Ellsworth, the man with no chin. And this shirt is even stupid. Maybe if it was a better looking shirt, I would be alright with it. But it's just his stupid face. And, no offense to the guy, but it's nothing that I want to be walking around sporting on my chest, if you know what I'm saying. I'd rather, the guy come up with a slogan or a logo or some shit, and then maybe I would have jumped on board this Ellsworth bandwagon. But I'm definitely not. So, that's all that there was newsworthy on SmackDown. I mean, you'd be heartless to not feel good at the attempt that he put forward. It was, again, one of these feel-good moments they want you to have. They want you to pull for the guy, and he actually got a near fall on the champion, and that was his moment. He almost got a 3 count on AJ Styles. That's the moment. And to me, it was not worthy of ending the show. And the rest of the show wasn't worthy of even being on the show. Good wrestling aside, it just didn't make sense. And what do we harp on all the time on this channel? We need things to make sense. For example, Shawn Michaels possibly returning at the Royal Rumble to take on AJ Styles instead of James Ellsworth, thank God. And I simultaneously love and hate this. I absolutely love it. Because to see the Showstopper versus the Phenomenal One would be a match that I almost was going to do on my 2K17 series, which is also featured on this channel. Please make sure you check it out. Every time you watch something, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because it's worth it, you guys. My commentary is fantastic, and I think everybody would enjoy it. And my Sting versus HBK Halloween Havoc match was, for me, even unbelievable to watch. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was hard for me to even call it because it was so unbelievable. So I encourage everybody, go back and watch that Go check it out. It's definitely worth your time. But back to the story at hand. AJ Styles versus HBK being rumored as the main event of the Royal Rumble for the World Heavyweight Championship. I don't know. Is it possible Michaels coming back for a run? I don't think so. It's probably a one and done. How else is the WWE going to seat 70,000 plus people? I mean, it's the Royal Rumble. It probably would have seated it on its own just because, to me, the Royal Rumble is very special. I've always loved the Royal Rumble. Most fans out there echo this sentiment. It's one of my, if not my favorite pay-per-view of the entire calendar year, excluding WrestleMania, although it's been a better show than WrestleMania in recent history. The Royal Rumble always full of surprises and is always very fun. It's interactive, you know, the waiting, the anticipation for each entrant. You never know who's coming out next. It could be a legend. It could be an indie darling. It could be anybody. You don't know nowadays who's going to show up at the Royal Rumble. But in the main event, or at least what I assume will be the main event of the show, Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles. Just saying that freezes my brain up. It's an amazing contest that could have only been done by those of us that do the WWE 2K17 thing. But it's actually in the process of possibly happening for us. And that is fantastic on so many levels for AJ. I'm sure it's always been a dream of his to wrestle Shawn Michaels. He reminds me so much of Shawn Michaels back in his heyday. They're going to put on probably the greatest wrestling match of all time. These are the two guys that when you ask somebody who's the greatest of all time, they're going to tell you probably Shawn Michaels, but currently AJ Styles. There's nobody better than either one of these guys in the ring. It's going to be probably the greatest match that's happened in at least the last 10 years. And I love every minute of it. But let us not leave out the fact that this only, what's the proper word that I'm trying to look for here? Accentuate, that's the word. This only accentuates the lack of talent that is available to the Smackdown brand. Going into the Alamo Dome in Texas, San Antonio, which is Shawn Michaels' hometown, as we all know, they were not confident enough to give that spot to one of the current people on the roster. Randy Orton versus AJ Styles, you don't think maybe would have filled up the arena? Been enough, intriguing enough, rather, for us to get involved? No, we're going to keep Randy involved in this useless Bray Wyatt thing. Again, I love Bray Wyatt, but this whole thing just doesn't make sense. He's fighting with Randy just to fight with Randy. It doesn't make sense to me at all. That's the sad part of this whole thing, and that's what many people are not seeing. They're being blinded by the starlight of Shawn Michaels and not seeing the writing on the wall, which is that SmackDown's got nobody else besides AJ Styles. Dean Ambrose, all these other guys over there, Cena's out doing his American grit. And even if it was Cena, how many times are we going to see AJ and Cena? It's better off to leave it for WrestleMania because it's going to happen. There's so many different things that they could have done with AJ Styles right now, but they're not confident enough in their talent pool to pull from within. And that's a scary thought because the same exact thing is happening on Raw. On Raw, there is nothing going on. It's absolute trash. And in order to generate any excitement at all, as I mentioned on the Monday Night Raw review this week, Goldberg is the only thing anybody gives a shit about on Monday Night Raw. A 50-year-old veteran. So what are we doing on SmackDown for the Royal Rumble instead of Survivor Series? We're bringing in a 50-year-old, a near 50-year-old veteran that people will go wild for because there's just nothing else to do with our top stars. And I'm not the guy to shit on the idea of bringing in the legends. I love seeing this. Don't get the wrong idea. I love the idea of Shawn Michaels fighting AJ Styles. I love dream matches. There is a place for dream matches in the WWE. This would have been better off being booked for WrestleMania. And possibly after Cena wins his 16th title. In my opinion, if I were to book it, I would have done it if that was what my job was. Now, I would never want John Cena to win the title again because I do not want him to even be mentioned in the same sentence as Ric Flair unless they're standing together somewhere that we have to say, look, there's John Cena and Ric Flair. Other than that, I don't want to ever fucking say their name in the same breath because it just doesn't fit. There is no comparison between the two. So I would never want to write this. But if I was being paid by Vince and I was one of his goons and one of his morons that write these shows for Raw, I would definitely write it so that Cena wins his 16th championship, tying Ric Flair's record at the Royal Rumble, freeing up AJ Styles to wrestle Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. Because that's what this match is for. But we're going to have it at the Royal Rumble. And I'm not going to complain too much about it because I cannot wait to see this go down. And if anything happens in the interim that makes this match not go down, I will be very, very disappointed. But I'm hoping for the very best possible scenario for both and that they will definitely have this match. If they want to make Shawn Michaels win and make a feud out of this, I'll be happy with that. Other than that, if it's a one and done, AJ Styles should definitely go over. And Shawn Michaels should help him cement himself as the very next best in the world in the ring. Because there's nobody better. There's nobody better than AJ Styles in the ring right now. On the WWE roster, on any roster, this is the best wrestler in the world today. He's been the best for a long time. And by putting him up against Shawn Michaels, he's going to be able to prove it. And it's one of these rare moments in wrestling that we're going to remember. Like I like to talk about. We're going to remember where we were when we watched AJ Styles take on HBK at the Royal Rumble in San Antonio this year. I can't wait. It's going to be amazing. One more little bit of wrestling news we're going to talk about before we get into some other sports news is Goldberg. I don't even really want to talk too much about this. There's plans, supposedly, for him after whatever happens at Survivor Series. I don't care. They just need to make it interesting. If they want to start up a feud between him and Roman Reigns, because that's where I see it going. If Goldberg's going to stick around, he's going to end up wrestling at WrestleMania with the Hall of Fame induction to follow and blah, blah, blah. He's most likely going to wrestle Roman Reigns. It's going to be spear versus spear. And I don't care. Goldberg will put the kid over. Because it's not like we haven't seen it already. He's only beaten everybody you throw in front of him. Still nobody cares. Poor Roman Reigns. He just can't get over. All he got to do is change his music and his outfit. Stop talking so much. Maybe give him a manager. That's all he fucking needs. And he'll be the star that Vince McMahon wants him to be. Just tell him to shut his mouth. Maybe just change your fucking clothes. And get a new song. Be a Samoan. Stop trying to be such a stupid enforcer type tough guy character because it sucks. Nobody wants to see it. Be more yourself. And don't be doing that stupid slogan you're trying to do. I don't even remember what it is right now and I don't care to. But that's going to be that. On our wrestling news for this week, we're going to move on to baseball. We're talking baseball right now, guys. And that is because this really is what made my decision. Because this year, the year I decided to start this show, we have a World Series that is worth talking about. We have, either way, some history-making stuff about to happen. This week, the World Series begins for 2016/17 season. And we have the Cubs, the Chicago Cubs, finally getting back into the World Series versus the Cleveland Indians. Now, this is a magical, magical World Series, you guys. It has been 108 years for the Chicago Cubs since the last time they were even in a World Series. No, I'm sorry, since the last time they won the World Series. I was reading my notes backwards. I apologize for that. 1908, last time the Cubs ever held up the World Series trophy. 1907 and 1908 were their 2 World Series wins. The Cubs had 10 World Series appearances between the years of 1906 and 1945. If you average that out, that's an appearance every 4 years for the Chicago Cubs. You know, that's a pretty impressive stretch. I would love to be part of a team that could say, you know what, we made it every 4 years here and there. If you wanted to do the average, we were in contention for the World Series every 4 years like a presidential election, which we will never talk about on this show, at least not this one. It's not worth even a fucking minute of my time. It would take them 41 years to even get back to the postseason at all, which would be 1984 for the National League Championship Series. Altogether, you know, in their entirety as a club, the Cubs have been in 4 National League Championship Series, 4 Divisional Series, and as we said before, 10 World Series appearances. That is nothing to sneeze at as an organization, even though we're talking about over 100 years of history. The Cubs were not to be messed with. They were only rivaled back in those days by my beloved New York Yankees. And I'm sorry if you don't like that, but I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a New York guy, and I love my Yankees. And the Yankees back then, think about this, 1921 to 1943. That's about 15 years less than the period of time we are discussing for the Cubs. And the Yankees won the World Series 14 times. Unprecedented, and will never be able to be duplicated again. Not that that matters in this case, because this year is about the Chicago Cubs. And last year, they were oh so close to being where they are today, but they were crushed by another New York favorite, the New York Mets. Again, just because I'm a Yankee fan doesn't mean I hate my other New York teams. I am a New York guy, so if you're not going up against my team and you got the New York in front of you, I'm for you. That doesn't matter. Across all sports. Jets, Brooklyn Nets, Islanders. I'm not those guys' fans. But if they make it into the postseason or for a championship and my team is not on the opposing side, I will always go for my hometown because I'm a born and bred New Yorker, and that's what we should all do. We shouldn't be hating amongst each other, but some of us do, and that's fine. And I still love you, no matter what. But yes, the Mets were the one to deliver a 4-0 sweep last year and totally destroyed any hopes and dreams of the Chicago Cubs getting to the World Series last season. And they are going up against the Cleveland Indians, who are looking to make some history of their own. The Cleveland Indians, over 100 seasons, also only have 2 World Series victories, 1920 and 1948. They've been in the World Series 5 times. They've been in the American League Championship Series. They finished their season, rather, in the ALCS twice. And the Divisional Series 3 times. And it has been 68 years for the Cleveland Indians since they have won a World Series. So on either side, there is a very huge gap between the last times these cities have won their respective championships. And what makes it even more special for the city of Cleveland is, as we all know, LeBron James took the Cavaliers to the world title, and this would probably be the first time that the Major League Baseball and National Basketball Alliance teams for their cities have won in the same year. I will need to fact check that, and if I'm wrong, call me out on it. Let me know in the comments below. If not, then, it was a pretty good guess. What can I tell you? So a very big World Series kicking off this week. I will definitely be tuned in because I love watching history go down. And something, either way, is going to be historic. And it's going to be a pretty evenly contested series. Both of these teams are very, very fierce. And they have some fantastic pitching staffs, obviously, because they made it all the way to the World Series. And the competition nowadays is tough. Think about the caliber of the arms on the pitching mounds that are out there. It's too many to even sit here and start naming because the pitching is unbelievable nowadays. And that's why when you're able to hit the ball and you're a home run hitter, you are more valuable than anything else in baseball. Because to hit these pitchers, throwing a 90, 100 mile an hour consistently throughout, dirty, nasty changeups, curveballs, it's too much. There's no way I would be able to do it. And I'm just your average schmuck. These guys are professional athletes going out there, and I totally respect everything that they do, and this World Series demands the attention and respect of the whole entire country because I'm rooting for the Cubs. I'm an American League guy at heart, but I'm not an Indians guy. I still don't forgive the Indians for what they did to my Yankees back in 97 and 98. I'm not going to root for the Cleveland Indians. It's just not going to happen. So literally anybody could have probably been put in that spot, and I might have went for them, but more so because the Chicago Cubs putting 100+ years on the line for this one, and I hope, because they've been waiting longer, that they're the ones to come out with that trophy at the end. Good luck, Chicago. Also, I know CM Punk loves the Chicago Cubs, so I'm going to go for my favorite guy's team. That doesn't hurt in my argument. You might not care, but, it's just something I take into account when I think about things when I don't really care about them. But let's go Cubbies. All right, so now that's out there. If you don't like it, I apologize. But that's how we do things here in the Nightmare Room. Talking about a nightmare, we are going to quickly glaze over the fact that tonight is the premiere of the new season of The Walking Dead. And we have been waiting for 3 months now to see who the hell Negan bashes their fucking brains in. And, smart money goes with Glenn, as it's been well noted. He is the one that suffers the wrath of Negan in the comic book's 100th episode, in which they did things to shake things up and shock the reader. And I believe that Glenn just might come out alive on the other end in this one, you guys, because if history shows anything, it's two things. A, they do not use the comic book as a Bible. They are not afraid to take a sidestep from what the fans already know. And secondly, it would be an event on television that the Walking Dead fans would never stop talking about, because I would bet 90% of the fan base, who at least has read the comic as well, is expecting Glenn to be the one to be axed off tonight. And if they decided to take a sidestep and kill, say, Abraham or Eugene or Maggie, which has been rumored here and there, but I really don't believe that they'd go that far as to kill a pregnant woman on TV. I mean, that might even be too much for me. For Glenn to watch Maggie being brutalized while his baby's... No, I don't even want to finish the sentence. No. Absolutely fucking no. So, that being said, it is not without the realm of possibility that the producers and the writers are going to swerve us because the world sees it coming. And in The Walking Dead, you shouldn't see anything coming. We all thought Glenn was a goner earlier this year when we saw him underneath Nicholas there, when he shot himself in the brain and then they fell into the pit of walkers, and Glenn, being the survivalist that he is, made his way out of that situation unbelievably so, and to the relief of almost all of us in the fan base, that was not the end of Glenn. This point, however, is the end of Glenn in what most fans already know, so we're all expecting it to happen. I hope that they pull something different because I love the character of Glenn. I loved him in the comic when I was reading it. Maybe it's because I started reading it, after I had already started season 1 of The Walking Dead. Some people think that's crazy to do, but when I love something, I love it 100%, and I take it in as much as I possibly can, which is why I'm a nut about wrestling all the time as well. Walking Dead is definitely one of my favorite shows. I delved right into it head first. I fell in love with Glenn as a character. He was young. He had an attitude. He didn't care about anything but living. All he wanted to do was survive. And here is a kid that honed the ability to travel and loot places and scout without being spotted, without being put in danger. And that is a valuable skill to have. And it's a skill that I hope to see explored further in his character if they decide to take this sidestep from the comic book. Glenn's character deserved to be further explored even then. He was a father. He was a husband. Like, this whole generational thing was there between him and the son. The kid was just a baby. They could explore this whole thing more. They could reopen the door of the character of Glenn. And that's what I'm hoping happens tonight. I do not expect it to happen at all. I expect to have to sit there and feel my heart sink into my stomach as Glenn departs the show and ends up on Talking Dead, probably for the last time in a while. And that, tonight, is how we're going to end the Nightmare Room on that note. Don't forget to please stay tuned to this channel, because this week we are going to have the debut of our WWE 2K17 Raw series. I am going to do wrestling better than they do. I'm going to take the shit they give me on this game, and I am going to make a show that is better than Raw every week using the same exact people they're using. Now, let's not get crazy. We all know that we're limited because the game only gives us so much to work with, but I guarantee you that each and every week, what the Sledgehammer Championship Wrestling Raw show will bring to you is going to be better than what you're seeing on Monday Night Raw. So if you're into that kind of thing and you don't mind spending a little time watching some wrestling and listening to Nick Nightmare call the action live, possibly occasionally with the help of Vito de Guido or Gerard St. Martin, my other two commentators that occasionally will do some matches. If you haven't heard any of this stuff that we're talking about, please go back to YouTube, check the playlists, go check out What Should Have Happened, watch the old episodes of The Nightmare Room, watch my Raw and Smackdown reviews. Our Smackdown review this week, again, was kind of jumbled in with this one because it just wasn't worth sitting here talking about for a half an hour. Our first episode of Raw will feature a tournament to see who takes on Dean Ambrose for the World Heavyweight title, as we are just after the draft here, and Dean Ambrose is the holder of the World Heavyweight Championship, and he will be on his way to SmackDown. He will not be on Monday Night Raw, and the winner of our tournament will be this year's King of the Ring, and also will have the opportunity to get that belt from Dean Ambrose before he goes to SmackDown. So be sure you be on the lookout and check that out to see who is going to represent the Sledgehammer Championship Wrestling Raw brand and try to wrestle that championship away from Dean Ambrose. And if they don't, what's going to happen on SCW Raw? Make sure you stay tuned right here to the Sledgehammer Sports Network for further episodes of Raw and our Raw SmackDown reviews, which can be heard right here. The Nightmare Room, which you're listening to right now. As always, I want to thank you guys for being a part of this and coming on my journey with me. My name is Nick Nightmare. I love you guys so much. For Blue, the Snowball microphone, and the Sledgehammer Sports Network, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good one, you guys.